So thank you all. I know this was a long trip to get here and I really appreciate you all being here. I think the most important thing at this challenging moment in science is that we continue to gather and continue to do this important work. And I just wanted to start by saying thank you to BIOS for letting us be here. It is a privilege and an honor to be able to be here at the home of one of the longest running time series. And also NSF EarthCube for the support for the research coordination network that we've had going on for so long now. You all know me, I'm Heather Benway. I want to introduce Danie Kinkade and Angelique White, who are my co-PIs on this award and have been kind of my partners in crime getting through this. And I also want to shout a big thank you to our leadership committee, and I hope I remembered everybody's name in this list, and if I haven't, I'm so sorry. It was kind of a craze at the end to pull this all together. But all of the people in this room, I'd actually love for you all to stand up so that people know that they can come to you with questions. So if all of the leadership committee members could just stand up, give them a round of applause. A quick note about the Ocean Carbon and Biogeochemistry program. I work for OCB. That has been my position for a long time now. And you can see that one of our big focus areas at the top here with these green icons is ocean observing. And in my mind, ocean time series are one of the most critical foundational observational assets this community has for looking at marine ecosystem change. And it is critical that we continue to gather, and that is why I have been championing time series since I started this role 100 years ago. So OCB sits in Woods Hole. Our project office is in Woods Hole, but it's a globally distributed network, and we do lots of workshops, activities, working groups. I'm also involved in a lot of science planning efforts like the Carbon Cycle Science Plan and things of that nature. So we're very engaged in bringing the science community together. Danie, would you like to speak to BCO-DMO for a minute? This is Danie Kinkade, the PI of the Biological and Chemical Oceanography Data Management Office. Thank you, Heather. So this is just to give you guys a little taste of sort of BCO-DMO's rationale for being engaged in this METS-RCN. And I don't want to talk too much about BCO-DMO because most of you either have heard of it or know it. And so it's really just giving you a little background context for why we partnered to bring you all together. So if you do know about BCO-DMO, we're funded by the National Science Foundation in the US primarily to curate and publish the data that is produced by their awardees in the Oceanography Division in the Geosciences Directorate. And what that means for the METS is that we end up curating and working with a lot of ocean time series projects, whether directly serving the data or tangentially serving related data and information. And so it's really important that one of the major successes of BCO-DMO is that we work really closely with the project PIs to best represent those time series. And this is the smattering, it doesn't represent, certainly it's not exhaustive. And so what I wanted to just present to those of you who are working with us, a couple of updates over the last, we're funded in 5-year cycles, and over the last 5 years, we've been working really hard to bring things forward in a way that really helps streamline the publication of your data. And so one of those is starting with a submission tool, an online web-based tool that allows folks to come in and submit their data independently of working with us. And there's some features on the side here, won't go through too much of it, but it basically allows you to collaboratively work on uploading your metadata. And we take copious amounts of metadata that allows the repository to then spit out any flavor necessary for whether that's ISO or kind of think of CFD or schema.org, yeah, whatever flavor we need. It allows us to communicate the status of projects or the status of your data sets. You can give these links to other folks in your groups and allow them to upload their content. It really streamlines the process. Prior to this, many of you know you had to do a lot of email dialogue and transferring of files via email. So we're coming up into the 21st century. Behind the scenes, when we work with your data, we've developed a tool that allows our data managers to process things in a very standardized way. And this declarative workflows generates a lot of information behind the scenes that's reusable. So in terms of time series, it really helps speed up the way we process data. It does some error checking. We've now standardized the way all of our data managers approach these things. And as time series produce more data, these pipelines are reusable. So it makes updates to data happen much faster. And then lastly, we launched in February of this year, we launched a new website. And there again, hoping to streamline the way human readable information is presented, and also to get to the data, get to all the metadata associated with it. Attached to that new website coming are also a few new features. Hopefully very soon, before the end of the summer, we're going to be releasing some usage metrics for how much your data is viewed and downloaded. A shopping cart that allows for aggregated downloads of multiple data sets, and then programmatic access to download data through API. And I think that is really all I had. Yeah. And happy to talk more about anything related to the US time series or the processing of those data offline. Thanks, everyone.
There are several people here from BCO-DMO. So Adam is right there, and Audrey, where is Audrey? Audrey's back there. So please reach out and talk to them while they're here. So I wanted to start with why I thought Marine Ecological Time Series should be an observing network under the Global Ocean Observing System, because we check a lot of boxes here. We still have some work to do, but we check a lot of boxes here. And so I started looking at all of the factors that are required, all the boxes you have to check in order to become, we're not there yet, but in order to become a goose observing network. And you have to be globally distributed, coastal and open ocean. Physical, that's not a requirement, that's just an extra bonus that we bring. We're measuring physical, biogeochemical, and biological variables above and beyond WHOI's EOVs. There's a lot of international coordination that's required, not just across the science, but finding commonality in our sampling and analytical methods. There's synthetic work we can do through statistical trend analysis and data product development, and the application of fair data practices so that we're using common metadata reporting approaches. We're measuring a fairly common core set of biogeochemical and ecological variables, for some of which no standards exist yet. Some of these are so new, especially the biological variables, that there are no standards. So there are elements of becoming an observing network, a cohesive observing network, that we still have work to do. We still have work to do on the data front. We still have work to do in even bringing our methods around to some common, or at least having an idea of how comparable two data sets are, if we even know the methodological information that was used for making the measurement. Who's here? Well, I just looked at a poster and realized that we have 28 time series programs across all 7 continents here, not just 6. So I'm really excited about that. That's pretty amazing. There were a few people who wanted to be here, but they were out on time series cruises. We also have an incredible array of data repositories, systems, and federations here, all of which I've listed. And that has been, this RCN has really been about bringing together the ocean scientists who are making the time series measurements with the data scientists and data repository managers who are developing and applying the fair data tools to make these time series data more accessible and more reusable. I asked you all to, for those of you who run a time series anyway, to enter updated information into this spreadsheet. Believe it or not, this is like, this is a gold mine. When I bring this to meetings, because we did this in 2012 when we did our methods workshop right here at BIOS. When we pulled this information together then, obviously it's a little outdated 13 years down the road, but it's still a treasure trove of information. Just to be able to go in and look at how somebody is measuring nutrients at one site versus another site is a really incredible. It's an incredible opportunity to inform your research and inform how, whether or not you can compare two data sets. And so we're trying to continue that, update the information we already have. And that is where this spreadsheet comes in. So if you haven't filled it out, please do so. I will be asking time series who couldn't be here to fill that out as well, so that we can have this as a resource. Why? Why do we do this? I don't know if you've seen the legacy of networks like the LTER, the long-term ecological research networks, where these sites have come together and coordinated with one another, how they take their measurements, what measurements they take. This idea of, you know, it's amazing in itself to go out and take measurements at one location over time and watch how that ecosystem changes. But when you can bring together multiple time series who are all doing the same thing, all over, distributed all across the global ocean, that's a whole other level of ecosystem analysis that we can do. And the types of synthetic analysis that the LTER program has been able to do and making these measurements in a common way at these sites over and over again over time, and having a data repository that uses these common metadata reporting approaches, that's kind of a gold standard. And that's what I would love to achieve for time series. And I would love to think that someday we could have a meeting every 3 years that brings us all together to share the science that we're doing. I think there's incredible value in that. And I think we can all be leveraging and supporting the work that each of us is doing at these sites to make something that's greater than the sum of its parts. So these are just fine examples of multi-time series analysis that we've seen through time. And furthermore, the very first biogeochemical time series data product that Nico developed. Nico, I don't know if you're here yet. I don't see you yet. He must have overslept, but he will be here. Nico, for his grad student, as a grad student, he pulled together all of the metadata. This was the first use case, right? Was bringing all of these data sets together and finding the commonality across them to build a data product of core biogeochemical variables. Similarly, Todd O'Brien with his fantastical statistical prowess and visualization interactive, whatever this is called, the Explorer is pretty amazing. To be able to visualize changes against the backdrop of satellite SST is just so much more powerful when you can bring these data sets together. So that is why this has been a passion project of mine since I started this job in 2007. More recently, the 2012 workshop and all of the work that came out of that, that's where IGMET started. The core of that started at the methods workshop here in 2012. And we have a time series subcommittee as part of OCD. And we spend a lot of time trying to create vision. I wrote with a lot of co-authors, I submitted a decadal vision paper for the time series for OceanOps 19. And then we had this fair data workshop, and I'm going to talk very briefly about those two things because they really kind of set the course for what we're doing right now. And then the biogeochemical data product that you're going to hear more from Nico about later, and so on. So the decadal vision paper, there's a DOI right there if you haven't seen it, and I also stuck it in the participant resources drive. But really, the thing I want to point out here is that for all of the things that we do, from capacity building to science and technology development to policy and decision support work that time series data can be used for, at the center of all of that is data. And that is why we are all here, is data. Trying to figure out how we can make the best possible use, maximize the return on the investment in the collection of these data to make them usable more broadly. And so there was kind of a decadal vision. You can see the four things, the four recommendations that came out of that. But we identified several challenges, data access and sharing, crediting and citing data providers, sustained funding for some of the most important observational resources we have. Sustained funding continues to be one of the big challenges that we have. But we have opportunities. We can get on the same page with methods. We can get on the same page with data and metadata development. And that's what we're trying to do here together, is try to socialize some of the work we've been doing with those of you who run time series and kind of bring fair data tools and practices to you. So the time series data workshop we had in Hawaii, this was associated with the Ocean Ops meeting where that paper was published. There were several recommendations from that. One of them, obviously, we needed to have a prolonged effort and investment in bringing the ocean scientists together with the data scientists. And that's what this METS-RCN was all about. I wrote the RCN proposal during COVID. And so our opportunity to come together was a little limited for the first 2 years of the award, 3 years. And so we did a lot of work virtually. And then as soon as we could come together, we started to. We talked about a pilot time series data product that could kind of be a use case for what would have to be done on the data side to make a product that would be useful. And that is what Nico did. And you're going to hear from Nico about the SPOTS data product very shortly. We talked about high-level international coordination and oversight. Somebody has to coordinate this at a high level in order for these data to be comparable, to be interoperable, to be developed into something greater than the sum of their parts, something like what Nico has developed. And that is where we talked about trying to become an observational network under GOOSE. And that is also how we got to be more closely aligned with ocean sites. We've done a lot of collaborating, and we actually have an ocean sites team member on our leadership group here. So we developed the METS-RCN proposal with these 3 goals in mind: fair data solutions, broadening uses and applications of time series data beyond just the small science communities and pockets of researchers who know about these assets, and building community capacity for data analysis, statistics, data model integration. And that's what some of these tutorials you'll see will be about too. You'll get introduced to a lot of new tools and visualization tools and data access tools that you may not have worked with before. We have attended a lot of meetings. You can kind of get a sense of that from the logos on the bottom. We had a big OCD webinar, ocean sciences meeting, town halls, sessions at the Ocean Best Practices System meeting, GOOSE OCG meetings, ocean sites meetings. We've really just tried to put ourselves out there, distribute, learn as much as we can about FAIR and bring it back to what we're doing, and also share what we're doing and what the challenges of the time series communities are with those groups. Building awareness about fair data tools. So this is just a snapshot from the earlier version of this amazing fair data primer. If you look in the participant folder, you'll see an updated version of this that looks amazing. I'm really excited for you to get introduced to that in a couple of presentations. But this is designed for the data producer, someone who doesn't necessarily know all the lingo about FAIR. And so you'll get a nice sneak peek at that. And finally, the metadata templates, taking sampling and analytical workflows and transitioning them into metadata reporting recommendations. That is something that we've spent a lot of time on, using these tools to support FAIR, like controlled vocabularies and web-enabled standards and the metadata templates that you'll be reviewing later today. There has also been some important work done Fernando Chico at University of Hawaii spent a bunch of time with a core set of variables that are listed down here, chlorophyll and pigments, particulates, and so on. Mapping these to the climate and forecast vocabulary, and even adding new terms to the CF vocabulary, and then mapping those terms to the BODC vocabularies, to the comparable chlorophyll, particulates, kind of connecting the two across the two vocabularies, which is extremely powerful. And you can access most of the CF inside BODC now, can you not? Yeah, so. Finally, I want to end on meeting goals and deliverables. Mostly, we brought us all together here. We don't expect you to leave here being an informatics specialist. We want to just build awareness and provide actionable tools to guide fair implementation for these time series. That is why we are here. We don't expect expertise coming out of this, but we just want to bring people together to build awareness. And that's really the networking and the building of awareness and capacity is really the core goal of any RCN. We want to share the templates. You'll spend some time today reviewing templates. I know it's not too exciting to look at spreadsheets when you're in Bermuda and it looks like that outside, but we will spend some time on the templates for ecological and biogeochemical parameters. We're going to share these tools and resources to support and broaden METS data use. And so that's going to be the FAIR data primer that BCO-DMO has developed. We'll be reviewing that, and you'll have one-on-one time with a bunch of data-minded people to ask questions and learn as much as you can. We're going to spend some time with Heather in this room at some point, updating the methods and analytical sampling and analytical recommendations we developed in 2012. Yes, it's been over a decade, so they likely need some updating. There have been a lot of new technologies. And finally, building community.